Welcome in, one and all. Welcome in, one and all. Hope all are doing well. I'm now going to be reviewing the divisional round matchups from this past weekend, as we had 8 teams down to 4, and we were just creeping that much closer to a Super Bowl berth. So for the Houston Texans, they went into Baltimore to take on the Ravens. It was a close game at halftime. It was all knotted up at 10, and then in the second half, Lamar and company just absolutely took over, getting 24 straight points. Final score being 34-10 in favor of the Ravens. They are now advancing to the AFC Championship game, and this is going to be the first time that they're hosting in their home stadium, which is M&T Bank Stadium, if I'm not mistaken. So a big accomplishment for this group, and I truly believe they should be Super Bowl favorites, but I mean, you could say anyone's a Super Bowl favorite at this point, as we're down to the last 4 teams in the NFL. So for the Texans, obviously it's a bitter pill to swallow, considering you made it to the Elite Eight, and obviously losing's never fun, and especially when you make it to the postseason, it's even more harder to lose because it's one and done, more or less. But for the Texans, you have to have a little bit of pride, because for a team that had very low expectations, you had a rookie quarterback coming in and a new coach, so there wasn't a whole lot of expectations for this squad. But not only did you finish with an above 500 record, you finished with a playoff spot, you got a division crown, you had your first playoff win against the Cleveland Browns in the AFC wildcard round, and like I said, unfortunately, you ran into a very hot Baltimore Ravens squad. So I believe this team has a very bright future ahead of them. I have a lot of faith in CJ Stroud. If he doesn't get the Rookie of the Year, he should at least get Offensive Player of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year, whatever the trophy may be for that category, because this kid is a stud, and he's going to be the face of that franchise for many years to come. All right, the next matchup took place, I should say, in San Francisco. We had the 49ers, and they played host to a team they are very familiar with in the Green Bay Packers. Okay, so you should see the teams on their screen as we speak. So this was their 10th time meeting in the postseason. Coming into this matchup, the 49ers had a 5-4 edge, and now they have a 6-4 edge. It was a very close contest, and Green Bay's defense did show up. 24-21 would be the final score. So again, whenever you lose in the postseason, it's never easy. But for this Packers squad, just like for the Texans, this team really can't hang their heads, as when you have Jordan Love on your team, and obviously when you have a coach in Matt LaFleur, who clearly knows a thing or two about winning, since aside from last year, he's always had a winning season since being the head coach back in 2019, I do believe, was when he first came in the league. So this Packers squad should be very competitive for many years to come. They just seem to always have a gift when it comes to drafting quarterbacks, or at least signing or trading quarterbacks. You had your Brett Favre back in the early 90s. Obviously, you drafted Aaron Rodgers to take over his throne, and then you obviously drafted Jordan Love, I think it was 3 seasons ago, if I'm not mistaken, to take over Aaron Rodgers as the quarterback. So they clearly know a thing or two about drafting quarterbacks, and like I said, just Jordan Love kid is going to be a stud. And not only will he be very competitive, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Packers challenge maybe the Lions for NFC North crown next season. As for the 49ers, they're making a trip back to the NFC Championship. Obviously, last season they played in Philadelphia. Brock Purdy did get hurt, and unfortunately, their season came to an end pretty early in that championship game last season. Now they're going to be hosting a championship game this time around, so they'll have their home crowd behind them, and this team is going to be very dangerous in the championship game, and I wouldn't be surprised if they made it to the Super Bowl, if I'm going to be that honest with you. The final score was 24-21. All right, the next game took place in Detroit. We had the Lions, and they played host to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Oops. Okay, so I'm sure a lot of people had the Lions and Buccaneers meeting in the divisional matchup. Not. Jared Goff is proving that he is definitely still an elite quarterback in this league. I'm sure the Rams, if they hadn't got that championship back in 2021, 2022, they'd probably be regretting this decision now. But, I mean, they still have Matt Stafford, so they really can't complain. As for the Lions, for a team that's been so poor and devastated with losses, they seem to be really have turned their franchise around. And not only did they have a winning season, they got the NFC North crown for the first time in 30 years. They got their first postseason win in the wild card round last week. and against the Rams, and now they're off to the NFC Championship game for the first time in many years. The final score in this one would be 31-23, so it was an offensive explosion to say the least, but they eventually came away with the victory. For the Buccaneers, this was a up and down season. Obviously, after Tom Brady retired last year, then they signed Baker Mayfield. You're not really going to be able to replace Tom Brady. Let's just be honest with you. Ask New England if you don't believe me. But for the Buccaneers, again, an up and down season. It took until the last week of the season for them to secure that NFC South crown. It honestly could have went to either Atlanta or New Orleans had they lost against the Panthers in that last game of the season. But there should be, if they can bring the momentum into next season that they did at the end of the season. Obviously the Buccaneers got the victory in the wildcard round over the Eagles. And like I said, this was a close game. They only lost by 8 points, just a single score. So had they not given up an extra touchdown to Detroit, they could have given into overtime. Who knows how this game could have played out? But again, you really can't hang your head if you're a fan of the Buccaneers. If they can win the division without Brady and with Baker, there's a very good chance they can do it again next season. But only time will tell. And the last game that took place on Sunday was between the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs. So for the third time in 4 seasons, these two teams met in the postseason. This is the first time the Bills were able to actually host a playoff game against the Chiefs, and it's hard to believe that in the 6 years that Mahomes has been the quarterback for this Kansas City team, this is the first time that they were playing away from Arrowhead. It's unbelievable how dominant they've been. Just goes to show how good their GM is when it comes to drafting and signing and making trades, how great of a coach Andy Reid really is. He's obviously Hall of Fame bound, there's no question about it, once he decides to hang up the coaching duties, I guess if you want to say. So for the Bills, there's a lot of expectation coming into this regular season and postseason. It was a bit of a rough stretch at the start. I think they were at one point by week 13, they were still sitting at 6-6 out of a playoff spot, and there were a lot of questions with this team moving forward, a lot of drama, and eventually they were able to pull their ish together and be able to finally get a bit of a winning streak going. It took until week 18 in order for them to secure their 4th consecutive AFC East crown over the Dolphins. So they were able to get home field advantage for the wild card round. They took out the Steelers, and then once the Chiefs beat the Dolphins, then everyone knew that these two teams were going to be playing against each other in the division round. The final score in this one would be 27-24. For Bills fans, I feel for you. I mean, they still have yet to win a Super Bowl. I remember back in the 90s, they went to 4 straight Super Bowls and lost each one. So it's got to be very heartbreaking. And then from, I think, the year like 2001 to 2017, they've missed the playoffs every single year. They finally made it in 2017, 2018, lost to the Jags. In 2020, they lost to the Texans in the wildcard round. 2020, 2021, they finally made it to a championship game against the Chiefs in Kansas City. And obviously everyone knows Kansas City pulled that one out. The following postseason, they met in the division round, and the Chiefs won, I think, 36-28. It was an overtime game, if I'm not mistaken. And obviously, this past weekend, yet again, in a division matchup, the Chiefs were able to prevail and come away with a victory over Josh Allen. So there's going to be a lot of question marks for this Bills team in the offseason. Do they make coaching changes? Do they make player changes, trades? I know Stephon Diggs at one point did say he wanted out, and even his brother said, hey, get that guy out of Buffalo because he wants to win a championship, and obviously he still has yet to make a Super Bowl appearance in his tenure as a wide receiver. So a lot of questions are going to be asked and hopefully answered for the Bills in the offseason. It's not a matter of whether they can be a successful team. They have been, like I said, for the past 5 years, they've had an above 500 record. They've made the postseason the last 5 years, but unfortunately they are not able to go over the hump and make it to a Super Bowl. So, yeah, again, I feel for you Buffalo Bills fans. It's not easy, but for the Chiefs, it's making their 6th consecutive AFC Championship game, and this is going to be their 2nd away game in the postseason. So it's going to be it's odd to see the Chiefs not hosting any games, but I believe it should be a very good matchup as the Chiefs will be taking on the Baltimore Ravens. I will be making a preview later on in the week for the AFC and NFC Championship games respectively. But yeah, That's what I wanted to do, a quick little recap from this past weekend and the division rounds. All right, that takes care of the video, I guess. That takes care of the recap from the past weekend. As always, if you're new to this channel and you like this type of content, please feel free to hit the sub button. I'd be very grateful and very appreciative. And until next time, take care.